Hey everybody, welcome back to the Jewelry Design course. Today I'm going to kind of wing it a little bit and we're going to talk about Mother's Day. It is just about 2 months away. It's going to come quick, and I think there's some things that you should be considering when you're dealing with customers about family jewelry, Mother's Day jewelry, things like that. So when I had my store open, I did a lot of design work for custom pieces for Mother's Day jewelry or family jewelry. And it was always a big seller to do something that was a one-off kind of thing, and it sold really well. I didn't have to spend a lot of time at the counter with the customer. I mean, we'd show them a few designs and they would go crazy over them, and it always worked out well. So I want to show you a few of those things today because it's kind of important to talk about Mother's Day because it is a good time of year most of the time to sell some family jewelry, especially custom stuff. Family jewelry is kind of custom because you're using, obviously stones, gemstones that represent the birth months for each of the kids involved. And sometimes you're adding mom and dad to those too. So kind of keep that in consideration. So let's start on a few things here. First, I'm going to design a quick pendant, and I'm going to show you one of the most popular sellers that I had in my store up in Western New York. It was always a quick seller, and I could make as many as I needed in any kind of design that I wanted. I'm going to make one, and I'm going to show you how to modify those so that the customer can kind of have them offset and dangled a little bit. So let's get rid of this stone, and I'm just going to get rid of this right now. We're going to X and delete that. And what we're going to do is just kind of add in a UV sphere. So I'm going to come over to my viewport. I'm going to hit Shift A, and we're going to add in a mesh UV sphere. Where is it? Right there. And you can see it's not really detailed enough, so I'm going to press Command 2 or Control 2 on my keyboard just to give that a little bit more detail. That is adding the subdivision surface modifier. So if we look over in the modifiers tab here, you can see we've added that modifier. Now this is a little bit different than if you're using an older version of Blender, but I started you out on 4.2. It's not much different than 4.3. We will be migrating to 4.3 shortly, and I will show you how to do that soon. But for now, just follow along. I'm going to go ahead and apply that modifier and just leave it like that. I'm going to look at this from the top down. So I am going to look at this from the top down view, and what I want to do is just kind of move this over here. I typically used 5mm gemstones. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is come over to Jewelcraft, add a gem. We're going to make that 5.0 millimeters. I'm going to leave that round, and let's just, because a really popular one is amethyst. A lot of kids born in February, I guess. That seemed to be one of the most popular stones I dealt with in Western New York, but it's different probably where you are. I'm going to go ahead and add in that gemstone. So I've got that gemstone there, and I want to make my sphere here, my UV sphere, just about maybe 10% bigger than the gemstone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to make this, let's see, I'm going to make this approximately 6.0 millimeters. And you can see my UV sphere is larger than the gemstone. And we also want to make it 6 millimeters on the z-axis, so we have a nice ball there. And I will lower this to be about here. And one of the things I did on these particular pendants was I'd have like a 5mm gemstone, and I'd make these about 4 millimeters to put a chain through it. Typically I sold a ton of wheat chains, usually 2mm or 2.5mm. So we used to use like a 4mm ball at the top to use as kind of a bail. So it looked like a little bar, but you can do whatever you want, jump rings, loops, whatever you want. I'm going to show you how I did it, and then you can kind of change this to meet your customer's needs. I'm just going to drag this over here. I'm going to hit Shift D to duplicate that, press Enter. I'm going to take that and I'm going to move this one up over here, about like so. And I want to make this one approximately 4 millimeters. There we go. And that looks pretty good. I'm going to leave it just like that. And I'm going to size this on the X-axis. So that red line there, I'm going to hit SX, and then I'm going to bring that in just about like so. So it's still kind of rounded, but it's not a perfect ball or a sphere. Okay, I'm going to use this as my bail, and we're going to use this one as the setting for the stone. So what I want to do now is just grab this piece here, look at this from the front view, and I want to chop off part of this bail. I'm going to bring that back up here like so, and I'm going to use a Boolean modifier with a cube to cut off the top half of the stone. hit Shift A. We're going to add in the cube. I'm going to bring that up just about like so. And then I'll size this so that it cuts off about that much of the UV sphere. And let's just put this back in the middle. Selection of cursor. Look at this from the front, and I'm just going to leave that right about there. Select the cube that I'm going to use as my cutter. Shift select the sphere, and then I'll do a Boolean difference. So I'm using the JewelCraft tool here, or you can use the built-in Boolean tools. I've showed you how to add those to your Blender functionality. So we're just going to go ahead and do a difference, and you can see now I've cut out the top of that to make it a flat surface. It's kind of what I'm looking for. Now I'm going to take this gemstone, and I know I'm using a 5mm gemstone. I'm going to go ahead and add in a cutter. Now you can see it cuts through a hole on the bottom. That hole looks pretty good. I'm just going to take the detail here and just make that 64 so it's a little bit more defined. What we want to do is modify the cutter so that the top part of it cuts a nice bezel set in this sphere. So I'm going to use the bottom here, and I'm going to bring that up a little bit, and then we'll take the top here and bring this up a bit so that we get a nice cut through, and I get a nice shape for the stone here. I'm going to select my cutter, shift select my sphere, or the bezel head that we're going to make here, and we're going to do another Boolean difference. So there you can see I have my gemstone with this little sphere here, and then I can bezel set this as I need to. So the really cool part about this is how I designed it. Typically, again, I use 5mm stones. I'd use a 6mm sphere, and I would add in a bar that goes from the setting to the bail. Now, if we look at this from the top view again, you can see I've got some distance here. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9mm just about separating that. I'm going to go ahead and add in a cylinder. So Shift A, mesh, and a cylinder. We're going to increase this to 80 just to give us some more detail. And I want to rotate that cylinder on the x-axis, RX90. And if you can follow along, you probably see what I'm going to do here. I'm going to move this over here, and then I'm going to size this down so that it's about like that. And if I look at this from the top, what I'm looking for is like 1.4mm on the length of this. Okay? So, or on the width rather. We've got about, I don't know, a little less than 1.4. I'm just going to make that like that. Let's go see what the dimension, 1.5. That looks pretty good. Now I'm going to size this on the y-axis and just kind of stretch it out so that it touches both our models. And I'm going to bring this down about like here. That looks pretty good. Let's look at this from the side view. And I'm going to bring my attachment point so somewhere around here. Okay? Now if I have to modify this, I can bring it in a little bit so that it kind of goes inside our setting here. But yet we want to make sure that all of the frame here that's connecting these two is encompassed in our bail. And I like to make that about centered, about like so. So far so good. And to get an idea of the overall length, I can take a measurement here, Shift A, and I'm going to just add in a cube, SY, and let's just see how long this is. We're going to move this over, and I'm just using this as like a quick measuring tape here. So SY, and we're going to make it about like that. And you can see it's about 16mm. That's not terrible for a small little pendant. But keep following along because we're not quite done yet. I'm going to move this over to the side here. We're just going to call this our measuring cube. Okay, so we've got our measuring cube there. We've got our round amethyst. We've got our cylinder, which is actually our, we'll call this mid frame. And I'm going to take this piece here. We're going to call it a bail because that's what we're using it for. And this will be our round bezel. Okay, so far so good. Now you can see what that kind of looks like. We're not quite done yet. What we want to do is add in a cylinder to cut this out. We want that to be approximately 3mm. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Shift A. We're going to come over to mesh and we're going to add in a cylinder right there. And I am going to come over to its properties. It's still 80. We're good there. And we're going to change this to 3mm. I'm going to drag this over to here, rotate it on the y-axis, RY90, so that it's rotated correctly. We'll look at this from the side view. Let's get this measuring cube out of the way. And let's bring this down to about here. And I'm going to bring this up around there. That looks pretty good. Okay, so far so good. Now I typically, when I design these, I typically don't start adding too much to this. I don't start joining anything yet because I like to make some changes to these once in a while. So let me explain some of the changes that I'm going to make here. What I like to do here, and this was my most popular design, just a straight bar with a small bail. I'll take this, I'm going to shift select our bail, and I'm going to do a Boolean difference using the Boolean tool. So we've got a nice round bail, and that will take, because it's about 3 millimeters, that'll take a nice 2.5 millimeter chain, or up to a 2 millimeter chain. And if you want to, you can adjust these even in post-production. You can kind of take some jeweler's pliers, kind of squeeze these down if you want these elongated. But if you need to make them bigger, like obviously I'm showing you how to do that. Okay, from this point on, I'm going to take this piece here and join it to our bail. So I'm going to Control Shift. Let's select the post, Control Shift, and select our bail. And then we'll do Control Shift plus, and we'll join those together. Okay, so now our bail is one piece with this length of what we'll call gold for all practical purposes in between. Now I did make these out of gold. I did a couple in silver, but most of the time it was white gold or yellow gold. And then we'd use appropriate gemstones. Okay, so that being done, let me show you what this looks like. And I am going to grab my material here. And I'm going to make this one white gold. We'll just drag in some white gold onto this particular piece. And let's go to rendered view so we can see what it looks like. So now you can see this is about how it looks like. And that's what it would come out to be in real life. Now when I made these, again, when you're going to have them cast or you're going to send them out to an STL file, one of the things when you're 3D printing is to compensate for the shrinkage that you're going to get during the printing process. You need to expand these approximately 3%. So for instance, I'm going to grab my setting. I'm going to grab, let's go back into modeling mode here. I'm going to grab my setting. I'm going to grab the bail here. And what I want to do now is export those out to be an STL file. Okay. So what I'll do is, let's see, do I have an STL file? I don't have that quick. So we're going to go to File, Export, STL. Your STL options are going to come up here, and we're going to click on this selection only, and under Scale here, I'm going to select that and do 1.03. That's going to increase the size of the outputted STL file approximately 3% larger than the model that I just designed. And we'll just go over to let's see, I'm going to save this. And I'm going to put Blender files here. And we'll go into that directory. And I want to export this model. Okay, so let's go ahead and save this as a Blender file too. So save as, and I'm going to go down to my recent one. And we'll call this Mothers 1. Okay, so now I've got this model here. I've exported to the STL, and if you want to see basically what I'm talking about, when you import your STL, you'll see that it is approximately 3% larger. And I'll grab that one. And in comparison, if we go into X-ray mode, you can see, I'll look at this from the side view, that our STL file is approximately 3% larger than our original model. It's a little longer, it's a little taller, it's a little thicker. Okay, so if that helps you understand what I meant, you can see there's some differences here in the size, and that allows for the shrinking that you're going to get, A, during the 3D printing process, and B, during the casting of these files. Okay, so with that particular piece selected, and let's just get rid of this. Let's turn off X-ray mode. We'll come back here. Now, what I like to do is if I had a mom who had one child, sometimes they would just select one pendant. Sometimes they have 3 kids, and we'd make 3 versions of these. And here's what I would use. This is how I used to do it. I'd continue to use 3mm or 5mm gemstones. And what I could do, looking at this from the top view, is take my bail. We're going to shift, duplicate that, G and X, and we're going to move it over on the X. Okay. Then I'd go into edit mode. I'd select that, press tab, and I'd box select the bottom of this. So let's go over here to box select. And I'm just going to go into x-ray mode, so I'm selecting the whole thing, and I'm going to grab all of this portion down here, and I'm going to make this one just a little longer, okay? Then I'm going to go back into object mode, grab this head, shift duplicate G, and I'm going to move that over to here, okay? You can see where I'm going with this, so I'd have a stepped look. Now for this particular one, I don't know, maybe it's, let's just grab a topaz. That's another one. We're still on 5mm. Let's go grab a topaz right there. We'll go ahead and add that. And then I'm just going to G and move that over to the setting so we get an idea what it's going to look like. Just like so. Okay, now if I go back into rendered view, you'll see that we have two pendants and they look pretty good together. I'm going to look at this from the top view. And just to get an idea of the rendered view here, I'm going to zoom in to these two pendants and give you a rendered view. Okay, so you can see how we could do this here. I've just shown you two examples, but that's pretty common for one of my best-selling Mother's Day items. Sometimes rings were hard for men to buy for their wives. I don't know why. They just had a hard time doing a ring, but they all seem to love these pendant ideas, and they're relatively inexpensive to make, especially if you're using, just regular gemstones, nothing in the precious gemstone area. But you can see by straightening or lengthening the length of these connecting bars, you can shorten them or lengthen them to any length you want and kind of give yourself a nice staggered look. And whoever gets this as a gift can change the position that they want to have each of these pendants laying. Maybe they want them in the same order, going from a short one to a long one. Maybe they want to stagger them. It's all up to them, and they can wear them in any way they want. So one of the great things about this particular pendant was I wasn't limited to using just round stones. Although round was the most popular, if we wanted to, we could just kind of get rid of these two here, and we could use a square stone. So in a square stone case, I could just basically add in a cube, Shift A, mesh cube, and I could size that up to, let's say I want to make this, I'll make this 5mm. And by adding the square cube there, we can just go ahead and add in a 4mm square stone. So I'll select square princess cut here, and we'll just do, let's see, we did topaz. Let's do, how about a sapphire? Let's try a sapphire. Go ahead and add that in, and I'm just going to raise this up. Well, we can get rid of these here. We don't need these. X. And just bring this down. Size that to, let's see, we got this as approximately 5mm, so we'll make our setting 6. Okay, a little bit larger, and you don't have to do that, but there's a couple cool things that you can do with these square settings. If I do this and I want to curve the corners here, I can press Control A and apply the rotation and scale, press Tab, come over to select edges. Remember, we select edges here, press 2 on our keyboard. I can select all the edges that I want to add a bevel to. Control B, and I can add a little bevel to those. Round them off just a little bit, like so. Kind of give myself a nice look. Grab our stone. We'll go back to Jewel Craft and do a cutter. And again, we're going to adjust the top part of that so that we're cutting that square. I'm going to take this, shift select my setting and do a Boolean difference. Now I've got an opening for my stone. We'll come over here and we'll just go ahead and add in some prongs on the corners. And I'll look at this from the top view, and we're going to bring those out just a little bit. I'm going to make this -30. Well, let's make that -50. -50. That looks a little better. Maybe even -60. That looks much better. I'm going to bring these up a little bit. We're just going to make them a little larger. And I'm going to bring the corners down ever so slightly, just so it matches the depth of our setting. And with that done, let's come over here and just add some height to it, because we need to add some height to it to cut that down and finish the product. And you can see, if we look at this from the top down, we've got this nice pendant. And again, we're just going to add white gold material to this. And come over to rendered view, to get a look at how that looks in real life. So that's not too bad. The cool thing about these particular pieces, if I grab my sapphire and shift select my setting, I can do also RZ45 and rotate that 45 degrees. Bring this down so that it is about here. And we come over to solid view shading here. You can see what my model looks like. And now we've got a nice princess cut setting that you could do multiple things with. So this was, again, the most popular style that I used to sell in family jewelry in my store. I don't have a store anymore, but I do want to give you guys some of the options that you can use to make and sell some family jewelry for Mother's Day. Now, the second most popular item that I sold, again, was still a pendant. And I'm going to show you basically how to do that. Let's go to File, New, and General. We're not going to save this. Let's get rid of the diamond that we have in our center. And this one was a little more simple, but a little more complicated to make. Okay, so what we did was we started with a cube. So a mesh cube, and I'm just going to put that on the screen. And I'm going to make this 4 millimeters wide, so 4 millimeters along X. And I'm going to make this 20 millimeters along Y, so that's long enough here. And we're going to make this 1.6 millimeters thick. Okay, so if we look at it from the side view, it's 1.3 millimeters thick by 20 high or long and 4 millimeters wide. This was a pretty simple thing to do, and I did these a number of times. Very good sellers. What we would typically do on this is add in a loop. So I'm just going to go ahead and add in what I would do for a jump ring. Shift A. We're going to add in a curve and a circle. You can see our circles right there. I'm going to bring that up to the top here so we can see it. And there is our circle. I'm going to size that up to about here. And we're going to go to our curve properties right over here. And we're going to give this some depth. So I'm going to increase the depth, count the resolution, and we're going to make that a little bit on the thicker side, so it was about like that. And this was the hole or the loop that we would use to make or add in a bail to this particular product. And very simple design, very clean looking, hang it on any chain, use any bail size that you want. We're not done yet. What we would then do is add in our gemstone. And I'm going to come over here. We're going to go to add a gemstone, and I'm going to add in a 3.0 millimeter gemstone. We're going to do let's do a garnet. That was another popular one that I used to get. We're going to keep that round. I'm going to grab that and bring that up so it's on the surface of our pendant. And I'm going to move this to the top, right over here, so that it was close to the top, just like that. Okay? And then the next step I would do is Shift A, and we're going to add in some text. So let's come down to text. And I'm going to bring that up just like so we can see it from the top view. And we're going to type in the name that we're going to use. So to have this be whatever the name was, and I'm just going to add that. So for instance, I'm just going to use this generic one, and we'll just call this Johnny. And what I'd like to do after this is just leave it that way. We're going to actually leave it in the same font, but you can use whatever font you have. If you have fonts in your computer, you've told Blender where to go look for your fonts, you can get a whole list of fonts to use by clicking on the font button, clicking this little folder here. And for instance, I have all these fonts available to me. Let's just pick something a little bit nicer here. The thicker it is, the bolder it is, the better, because that'll come out better in casting. So let's just come over here and grab, let's say this font here, and we'll do open font, and that changes the font here. Now I'll come from top down view, and I'm going to rotate that 90 degrees on the Z-axis. RZ90, and you can see it rotates it. And I'm going to size this up to about the width of my pendant. Okay, just like so. And then I like to size these a little bit longer so they fit there. So we'll hit SY and we'll drag this out so that it's nice and deep, and it kind of conforms to about the equal distance from the gemstone to the Y, and then the bottom of the pendant to the J. And I'll bring that down to about the surface, right about here. Okay, so far you're following me out. Now we've got this text here, and that's exactly what I want to use. It's the font that I want to use. What I'm going to do next is to convert this to a mesh. So I'll come to Convert to Mesh and press Tab. I'm going to hit 3, All, select all my faces, then Extrude ZZ and bring that up just like so. So I have a nice thick representation of the word Johnny. And now we have it in a 3D model. And then from the side view here, what we're going to do is drop this into our pendant like so. Okay. And then I am going to take this and do a Boolean difference on our pendant. So I'll take the letter. It's now converted to a mesh. So let's just say Johnny. And we're going to call this our pendant. And this is our bail. If I could spell. Okay. And then what I'll do is grab my text, shift select the pendant, and then do a Boolean difference. This may or may not work, so I'm going to show it to you. And if we get an error, I'm going to show you how to fix it. Okay, so that worked. That was pretty good. However, if it didn't work, what I would recommend doing is to take your object, your pendant here. Let's just Control Z, go back. We're going to take our pendant. We're going to press Control A and apply the rotation and scale. And what I would recommend from this point doing, if you got an error in your Boolean difference, is take your pendant, add in a remesh modifier. So we'll come over to our modifiers here, add a modifier, come to remesh, and then you can see if we look at this, it gives us a little more detail in the overall geometry of our pendant, and then we can apply that. Hit apply. Now I'll go back into solid view here. Then we can again grab our text, grab our pendant, and do a Boolean difference. Okay, so now you have a much more detailed piece in your geometry, but it looks exactly the same. A lot of times you might run into errors or issues with your text or certain fonts, and this is a good way to fix them. Okay, now this is one option that I did, and I sold quite a few of these. Again, we'll grab our gemstone here. We're going to do a cutter. I'm going to bring up the top of that just so it cuts through our pendant. Give this a little more detail so it looks cleaner. And I'm going to take our, little jump ring that we added. We're going to convert this to a mesh. Right click on it, convert to a mesh. I'm going to take our jump ring, hit our pendant, shift select our pendant, and then Control plus or Control Shift plus to join those two together. And now I'll grab our cutter, shift select our pendant, Control Shift minus, and now we get a nice hole for our gemstone. And then it was very simple. From the top down view, I would just go ahead and add in 4 prongs. Very simple. And adjust those 45 degrees on the position so it's equal distance. And then we'll change our intersection just a little bit to give us approximately half that. And with a 3mm stone, you could use like 0.7 to 0.9 millimeters is a good option for the prong thickness. And because it's going to go to casting, I'm going to add in a little more gold here so we have something to take off when we go ahead and do the setting. Once that's done, I'll grab my prongs, shift select our pendant, Control Shift plus, and join those together. And now if I look at this from the top down view, and let's just make this yellow gold so that you can see the difference. And we'll go into rendered view. It's pretty hard to see that view, so I'm going to rotate this around so you can see what it looks like. That's not so bad, like the way that looks. Again, you can do some things to highlight the difference in here. A lot of times we'll use some antiquing solution or some black permanent ink or some enamel to get maybe a different color in the text. So let me show you what that looks like. Just to give you a visual, because you do that after obviously you're done with the piece. We're going to come over here. We're going to select these. If I hit L, it's going to select all. What we want to do is kind of get all of this with the C key. I'm going to grab the C, and then I can grab all of these little faces that are reset in here. And again, this is just visual. And if you add in your antiquing, let me just grab these. C, and I'm going to grab these again. I'm not grabbing all of them. I'm just trying to give you C. Let's see here. Okay, to cancel C, just right click. And I'm just going to grab a few of these here. Now I got to move, so I'm going to right click, scroll out, scroll in, press C again, and then we'll just keep grabbing the pieces that we're filling in here. And if you make a mistake, Control Z, right click, then Control Z, press C again, and again we'll do that again, just like so. And I'm just going to grab a few of these here. And we'll grab these here, just like that. Right click to cancel that. And now we're going to go ahead and add in a color to this. I'm going to make that black. So what we're going to do, because we're working on a model in edit mode, we're going to come over to our material view here. We're going to hit plus to add in a new material. I'm going to hit new, and we're going to call this black. And then you can see here is currently white, and I'm going to double click on that, and I'm going to change this to black, just like so. And press assign in edit mode. Press tab to go back into object mode. And if we go into the rendered view now, you should see that the inside is nice and black. And that's what it will look like with the enameling or the antiquing or whatever you choose to put in there. Okay, so this was a great option that I did a lot of for pendants for Mother's Day. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. These ideas should carry you on. You can see you can change styles of anything. You can make these as narrow or as wide as you want. It's up to the customer. Choose any size you want. I do recommend, if you're going to do like an inset casting with the text in it, that you cast with new gold, very clean, very new. Just get yourself some clean gold from Stellar or Rio or wherever you're going to go get your clean material to cast from. Try not to use existing customers' jewelry that hasn't been processed. And remember, you can always send your material out. If you have old gold that you want to scrap out, you can always send that to a refiner and have them send you back casting grain. That's a good option to think about. Most of my clients do their own casting. A lot of clients I have also send their castings out to companies like Jaguar or Carrera. Carrera is got a fast turnaround. They're pretty affordable, and their castings come out great. And all you have to do is send them the STL file, email it to them once you have an account with them, and they will, within 5 days or 6 days, you'll have your castings ready to set your stones, finish, and polish up. So, guys, I hope this helps you for Mother's Day. It's a good time to start thinking about it because it's only a couple months away. To prepare yourself for this stuff and plant the seed with your clients. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And thanks for watching these courses and being a member to my channel. I appreciate everything you guys offer me. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comment section. Take care and have a great day.